Hello! Thank you for tuning in to You-niverse Healing. I have a special guest with me today, my partner Damian, of going on 7 years. So I'm very excited about this episode because I want to bring something to the table, which is integrating this whole healing process with another individual, being your committed partner, or even if it's complicated, there's that person that you feel bonded to, attracted to, and how can you make that work when you yourself are going through so many upgrades and changes in your own life? So, would you like to let people know who you are? For those that don't know you?
Sure. So my name is Damian Murillo. I've been Jessica's partner going on almost 7 years come this January 11th, for those of you that don't know. And you might have seen a little bit of me on some of Jessica's socials. So some of you may know who I am, but for those of you that don't, I'm just a very down-to-earth, I strive to be a centered, balanced person, but I'm just overall very loving, kind person. I think that's one of the things that brought us together was my kind, loving nature, and I was very attracted to Jessica's, you could say, bold personality. She kind of helped bring out some of my own boldness, which we'll get to a little bit.
Sweet, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see. I just want to get into the nitty-gritty of things for the most part. Let's get down to the root of what this healing journey is actually really like in real life when you actually apply these tools and lessons and integrate them, as unpleasant as it may be, a lot, multiple times throughout your relationship. So we've been together for almost 7 years, like I had mentioned, and it has not been a walk in the park.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the slightest. Is it easier now? Yes. Was it easy in the beginning? No. And we actually went through a lot of trials and tribulations.
Still going through it. I feel like it never ends.
Yeah, it is.
You can handle it with more ease and grace as you go along the process.
Yes, and it is ongoing. So, Damian, I would like to ask you what it was like for you throughout these 7 years being together.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you. It's an absolute honor to be on this podcast. For you to share me with your audience, I really appreciate that. So thank you for having me on. Okay, so let's get into it. So I have a tendency to be kind of a left brain kind of guy, and she has a tendency to be more right brain. I think that's one of the things that's kept us together, is that we strive to bring each other balance within our relationship and within ourselves. So I want to kind of start in chronological order, kind of go to the very beginning.
You like that?
Yeah, I'm definitely like that. So at the very beginning, without getting into too many details about how we met, I'm going to save that for a different episode sometime.
Mm-hmm.
But during the beginning, there was a lot of excitement. It was a lot of passion, you could say. When we first got together, I had just I was going through a tremendous period of transition in my life, without getting into too much detail, of course. But as things progressed, after we officially began, dating, things were moving very quickly. I quit my job because I found out that my family and I were going to be moving to Texas, here in San Antonio, where we currently still are. And I asked Jessica, hey, do you want to, move in with us? Because I just knew that I loved her so much. I didn't want to lose this special person. I had never met any human being like her in my life, and I just knew I can't let her go, I, self-admittedly have dealt with a lot of, jealousy and attachment issues. That's part of, tuning into yourself and your tendencies. So I can definitely say there was probably some of that, but there was something more. And I think that's what's still part of what's kept us together, is that there's a certain magnetism, attraction that we feel towards each other. A depth. That's a great way of putting it. A soul family resonance. And in this lifetime, it's being expressed as lovers, friends, and just so much more. But anyways, I knew that I couldn't let her go from my life. She had made such a tremendous impact by the time we began officially dating that I'm like, I gotta keep her in my life. So I asked her, hey, it was very bold. We had, barely begun dating. We had only really been talking online. We had a few dates and stuff like that, but
very few.
Yeah, very few. We hadn't really gotten to know each other on a super deep level as you get to do when you live with somebody. And, most importantly, we hadn't really got to know ourselves. We had been dealing with a lot of trauma that we hadn't even been aware of that was affecting us, which for a lot of people, you're not aware of it until you begin the journey of healing, which this episode is all about. This podcast is all about.
Yes, although I would like to add that we were both barely on the path of this, self-discovery.
Absolutely.
Like
very young,
Yes. Like you were taking more time for yourself. You were focusing on your career. I was focusing on college prospects and, really trying to find my identity within this world. So we were both in the beginning stages of self-discovery, I would say. So I wouldn't say we completely didn't know ourselves, but I guess in the grand scheme of things, the way we know ourselves now, it's completely different than, let's say 7 years ago.
Yeah, well said. So anyways, I asked her, you want to move to Texas with us? And she gave a resounding yes. We didn't know what we were getting into, so we're just like, all right, let's do this. So I put in my 2 weeks notice at my job, and then I arranged to go pick her up from Lake Havasu in May. I quit my job in April, so I took like a month to myself to hang out with my friends and kind of do my own thing. But come mid-May, I went to go pick her up, and on my way to go pick her up in the desert, I was just contemplating. I knew that my life would forever change, and we've pretty much been inseparable since. Aside from a day or two or like a week where she went on vacation without me to California, we've pretty much been at each other's side during this whole time. So yeah, my life really did change radically that day. I would say for the better. All right. So anyways, fast forward. We during our time in California, where I was staying at while I moved to Texas in June, we went on a lot of traveling, and this is where the beginnings of the healing, and kind of really started for us, because I noticed certain things with Jessica that she would, guess a good way to put this is started having like, I guess we call them like episodes, where she would like get really distraught, kind of like seem kind of confused or like a little out of control in some ways. I was like, whoa, what's going on with her? What's troubling her? She felt like it was like too much for her. Like she didn't, was doubting, like, what am I doing with this guy? Like I don't even hardly know him. Like I've just uprooted my life, and it's perfectly understandable. But then there'd be like moments of like anger, and I was like, whoa, like what's going on here? Are you okay? Like, because I felt in my eyes that I was like treating her really well. Granted, I mean, at the time I was still acting very unconsciously in many ways, but overall I felt like in my heart I was treating her right, loving her, trying to be a good provider even back then. So I was like, whoa, what's happening here? Like it seemed very irrational and illogical, because I tend to be part of a logical person, so I'm like, it didn't make any sense. Like, what's going on here, like we'd be traveling and she would just flip out over something would trigger her. That's when I started noticing that she'd get triggered very easily, and I just had no idea why. It wasn't until years later that I discovered why these triggers would affect her. Then I discovered my own triggers down the road. But yeah, that was the kind of like beginning. During our travels, kind of like, well, what's happening here? But still, I loved her. We got through our travels, we worked through it. We had a lot of fun during our travels. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't all trauma and lashing out and things like that. There was a lot of fun moments. We went to Yosemite and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, but anyways, so we got to Texas, and that's where I would say the real healing really began.
Woo!
Whew, yeah. It was quite the tumultuous period in both our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that was really the moment where, our awakening to our true selves and, the path of healing to heal our unresolved traumas and our lineage's traumas, because we didn't know at the time that a lot of these traumas had been passed down to us through our ancestors. Yeah, we're not at that level of awareness yet. So yeah, so once we got to Texas, man, it was quite the culture shock for both of us. Me being a California boy, it's a certain vibe, it's a lifestyle. So many of you watching this are probably from California, and the SoCal life, the SoCal vibe, easygoing. The weather's always nice. Like, I miss it a lot. I miss all my friends and family from over there. But in this life, things change. The winds of change come a blowing, and you'd be a fool not to resist them. So you got to go with it. That's one thing we've learned together, is to go with the flow, to go where life takes us. Through the twists and turns. Mm-hmm. So life has brought us to Texas, and I'd say that it's been one of the best decisions of our life, even though it hasn't been easy. Mm-hmm. We're back. We had moved to Arizona later, and then we came back here now. And I'm glad I'm here now with just everything going on in the world. This is where I want to be to kind of ride out the storm that's currently happening. Mm-hmm. But anyways, that's getting too far ahead.
Yes. Back to chronological.
Yeah, back to chronological order. So yeah, the first year here, this one we really began to notice Jessica's trauma starting to surface, and my own as well. I'm not saying it's all her, I had definitely had my part in some of the disharmony, and I'll own up, to everything that I did or didn't do. Definitely own up to that, because I've had my own stubborn tendencies that cause a lot of friction and disharmony in the early years. So yeah, that's when I really started noticing her anger. I think that for me in our entire relationship, that was always the thing that really stood out and that scared me at times and just really brought me down. I didn't understand why she was such an angry person, because me being the exact opposite, so kind and loving, even I would say to my detriment sometimes, not taking care of myself, giving too much of myself, not having healthy boundaries. That's something I've been working on, still working on now. But yeah, that's one thing I noticed, that I felt like I was, in my eyes, I was doing everything I could to be a good partner and to still, go about day-to-day life and responsibilities. As it never stops. The bills don't stop. For us regular folk, if you want to call us that, which I prefer extraordinary, ordinary, but that's just kind of my own term. But anyways.
I like that too.
Yeah, thank you. So, having to work. And then that's one thing about, that maybe has caused a little bit of friction. Well, I wouldn't say friction, but just kind of tough waters to navigate their relationship, is that because of Jessica's trauma, if you can go back to, is it episode 1, not working a regular matrix job? Yeah, go back and want more details as to why Jessica hasn't been able to work a regular job. But that's definitely been something that's come up a lot in our relationship, especially in the early days when I didn't know how traumatized she was. So it baffled me, why can't you hold down a job? Hey, because I had a plan when we came to Texas. I didn't just want to bring her here on a whim, all nilly-willy. I'm not that kind of person. I like to plan ahead and kind of do things with strategy. But just a little aside right here, Jessica has helped me learn how to add more spontaneity in my life and to change course, adjust the sails, if you will, when needed. Because I believe that it's good to set intentions, to have a plan, but as things arise, you have to be able to adjust your sails, according to the flow of life, where the wind wants to take you. So you got to know where you're going, but if you need to take a detour, you should. It'd be a fool to head into treacherous waters if you can not, go around it or find a different way. So anyways, the jobs. We came here with a plan. I was at the time a pharmacy technician, aspiring to be. I had a plan to get my license here in Texas, and I had a job already lined up at Amazon at the warehouse. That's a whole story right there. But anyways, yeah, I had a job. Yeah. I had a job, which was very grateful for that at the time, because I was coming here. I hadn't worked for a month, and as you know, when you don't have much savings, and using credit cards a lot, that can pile up pretty quick. So I was like. Taking a chance, took a risk, I don't regret it at all, because I got a lot of, travels and life experience out of it with her and myself, and it's one of the most beautiful times of my life before I moved to Texas the first time. But anyways, yeah, we moved here, I had a job, so things were going okay, on that front, I was working a lot, and she was home, trying to find a job, and I can't remember when you actually found a job at Revolution.
Yeah.
Was it like pretty early on?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we both had jobs, and we were, I was aspiring to be the pharmacy tech. Yeah, I studied an exam that I had to do to get my national certification so I could apply here in Texas because I had got my education in California. But anyways, so I did the process, and I had to wait a while for my background check to clear because there was something there which I won't get into at the time, but it held me back. So that took a while, and during the time I was working, she started working, and things were okay, but then there's still moments where she would just flip out over the littlest things, and we would make up. So it was like a cycle began.
A cycle, roller coaster of emotional intensity, everything spiraling out of control, each person wanting to control it in their own way, hurtful things being said or done, then making up apologies, then the love making that happened after that to reconnect, and it was just like this vicious cycle of unhealthy. How would you even describe it?
Well, yeah, it was a very unhealthy cycle because we became very codependent in a very unhealthy way, especially early on. And just to touch up like real quick on the lovemaking aspect, as a man, it was very confusing for me to like make passionate love with her, which we have a lot throughout our relationship, and it's been wonderful. But for me, it was very confusing because as when you do make love in such a passionate way, like it bonds you on a very deep level, not just physically but emotionally, spiritually. So then we would have these high highs, and then like the next day or something, like come crashing down, and that kept happening over and over again. So as you can imagine, as a partner, like it was very confusing. Like, whoa, what's going on? Like, last night we were, great, we were cuddling, like everything was, we were in heaven, heaven on earth, and then now I'm in fucking hell, I'm like, what the fuck is going on, like it was a lot of those moments for me, and it really baffled me, but, life had to continue, had to keep going to work, and all these things, and, eventually, to kind of like speak the story along, I eventually got my pharmacy tech license, so I'm like, all right, here we go. It's going to be time for us to prosper because I'm going to get a better paying job for what I studied for what I thought I wanted to do with my life, which is to help people through medicines. At the time, though, I didn't know I was giving people the wrong medicines, or so they masquerade as, more like poisons.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I did got a pharmacy tech job. So fast forwarding to 2016, I got my first pharmacy tech job in Austin. And, I thought, great, here we go. My plan was to work at a retail pharmacy for a little bit, and then work my way up the ranks to a hospital pharmacy where, the good money was at. So I was more of in a, like, career, like, money-focused sort of mindset. Like, this is how we're going to do it. Jessica's going to work, and we're both going to rise together. So, growing up in SoCal, a lot of couples, especially young ones, they both work, sometimes a lot, most times, to try to just make it, and that's the sort of mentality I brought. I didn't think or even know that, we were going to be more of a provider, housewife sort of dynamic like we are now. I just had no idea that that's kind of like the type of person she was maybe best suited at for this moment. But, at the time I was just like, okay, that's how we're going to do it together. That's how we're going to get our own place, because, we were at my parents' house, and, full disclosure, we still are right now. Many twists and turns we can get into some other time. But I was like, all right, we're doing it. We're going to get our own place. And during this time, we became enamored of the city of Austin, because I worked in Austin, and we got to know some friends there, and it was a very appealing place at the time. And we just loved it. We loved the vibe. It reminded me a lot of LA, which, I loved going to LA when I was in my early 20s. So I was like, it's perfect, like we're in Texas, we get to be in a more open-minded city, because San Antonio is a little bit more conservative, which I actually kind of like now.
Yeah, now it's good. I like it. I like the hospitality. I like I like the chill, easygoing, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Hold the door for you type of mentality that San Antonio and just other parts of Texas has. But at the time, you know, coming from Southern California where it's buzzing, you have conveniences at your disposal, you only have to sit in traffic for like an hour to get there. But once you're there, it's, you know, it's fun, right?
Yeah, you know, at the time, you know.
So I think in a lot of ways it reminded you of home, and you know, you kind of were already kind of bred in that way. So I felt like you felt very attracted to Austin from the get, and I did too. But I feel like you did on a whole other level.
Exactly, you know, and she said it pretty well. You know, having grown up in, you know, Southern California and going to LA a lot, spending a lot of time there, it had as a similar energy to LA, obviously different, unique, but yeah, but with that also comes like LA style prices for Texas, you know, and LA style traffic. So there's all that. So we wanted to move to Austin, but you know, as we pursued that goal, we quickly found out that was very tough to obtain because of the cost of living and just the logistics of all that. It wasn't going to work out as we were starting to see. And then there was one day where things really took a twist. One of the biggest ones yet was when I was at my job at the pharmacy tech, you know, pharmacy place, and you called me and told me you had a dispute with a coworker at the juice shop where you worked at. And I remember I had to like take a break at work, and I was like, oh, jeez, like, dude, like I can't be dealing with this because I was already dealing with some stress and BS at my job. Yeah, and I was like, oh my god, like what is going on? She told me that she got into you know a dispute with a coworker, like, and essentially like I can't remember exactly what happened, but I don't know if you walked out or you know like.
Yeah. Things got heated. Very dominant personalities butting heads, and I essentially like kind of quit / got fired. It was like a 2-in-1 type of scenario. But that's aside from the point. The point is that I called him and told him about the situation, and it was a very heated situation. I was extremely angry, like very angry, and even shaking, you know, that type of anger. Some of you guys might understand this, others might not. But when you just have like so much adrenaline that you could act violently, you could, you know, do things that you normally wouldn't, you know, all because you have all this pent up like rage and anger. But, you know, I called him, I told him the situation in the heat of the moment, and so then he had that to think about and deal with.
Yeah, and that was the first of many incidents where her, you know, traumas and specifically her anger, like, started affecting me at work. Because, you know, I pride myself in doing a good job in any job that I've ever worked at. It just takes me a little bit to get acclimated to the actual job functions, you know. At any job where I've lasted a considerable amount of time, I tend to be, you know, known as a good worker, somebody that's reliable, you know, steady, even keeled, all this stuff, you know. So that was the beginnings of her affecting my, like, energy, my mental state, my well-being at work in probably not the best way. So yeah, I started thinking like, oh man, what are we gonna do? You know, like we were, you know, barely starting to like get up and save money, and you know, like the whole thing. And I was like, oh geez, like you know, financial stress started to really ramp up at the time. And I was like, dude, what am I gonna do with her? You know, like, yeah. So then that happened, and then I ended up leaving that pharmacy tech job for a different one a few months later because things were getting crazy there. That's a whole other story. So yeah, I found a different pharmacy tech job closer to home in San Antonio, in the city of New Braunfels, which, yeah, that's a whole other story about the city of New Braunfels, which is currently where I work now. But anyways, yeah, so I went to this pharmacy, and this is when my own personal journey of healing and awakening really ramped up. At the beginnings of my time at the pharmacy in New Braunfels, I had a breakthrough dose of DMT, my second time. It was very profound, just to not to get too into it, but I had broke through to a higher dimensional realm, and it left such an impact in my life, and I feel like I'm still kind of unpacking it. It was a lot of massive downloads. If you guys know anything about DMT, I could talk about it in my own podcast in the future. So, but just to not get too into it, it was a very powerful experience, and I feel like that was what really catapulted my awakening, my healing journey. It had already begun prior, but that I could say was the moment where it's, because in the following months after that, I noticed that I started to change. Like, it came on gradually, but then it intensified. Like, things that I liked prior, like, I no longer liked before, you know? Like, that was the beginnings of me changing my relationship to alcohol and to beer, you know? Because before that, during my early mid-20s in Southern California, I became quite enamored with craft beer culture. It was something I could connect with my friends and other people, you know, and I had a few beers in me. It made me more comfortable in my own skin, because I struggled a lot in my 20s with social anxiety and feeling comfortable with who I am, because I just didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I had inside of me. A lot of trauma, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. But anyways, yeah. So my journey of awakening really took off towards the end of my run at that pharmacy in New Braunfels. Yeah, there was one day I smoked some cannabis, and then I just had this like crazy experience where like felt like my reality was shifting. I felt like I was experiencing kind of like a psychosis, which I had kind of experienced before on a trip at LSD when I was younger. And so it was really scaring me, because I thought I was losing my grip on reality. And during this time, Jessica had gotten injured. She'd injured her hip. How did you injure it? At work?
No, it was just a subtle movement.
Yeah. And that got worse and worse, and it really began to affect her mental state, like really bad, to the point where like she got super depressed and like low and angry all at the same time. They would express themselves like differently at various moments. But yeah, like it really started affecting me at work. There was one time I was like going to work, and she's like, "Oh, you know, all you do, you get to go to work, and I'm here stuck by myself." And you know, she was just throwing herself like the biggest pity party ever. Like that's when that aspect of her trauma really came in, is that she would like. Yeah, so as a partner, I got to experience lots of moments of like feeling sorry for herself, like essentially playing the victim, using the victim card. That's something that was very prominent early on, is that, you know, yeah, like as we begin to uncover like a lot of things that she'd gone through, she would, you know, kind of have that mentality of like, oh, poor me, I went through all these things, you know, like, and yeah, it was a lot of things she's been through have been very traumatic, and I had the utmost compassion for her from what she went through. Nobody should ever have to experience what she's gone through, especially a child. Oh my God, you know, like as we uncovered more of what she went through, it was like some horrifying things. So I can't help but have compassion for her as not just my partner, you know, and my lover, but just as a human being. Like, whoa. But anyways, it's all, you know, for the highest and greatest good, as messed up as that sounds. But yeah, at the time she was still like giving away her power, if you will, you know. She was like, oh, poor me, all these things happened, you know, like essentially giving off that energy, like, feel sorry for me because I went through all these things. And during that time, like, it had happened enough where I was like, okay, yeah, you went through all these things, but it's time to heal and, you know, move on. Like, you know, we can't let the past just keep bringing us down, but it was a loop. That's when that loop began. And, yeah, it eventually came to a head, because it just really started, you know, like getting to me at work, and then I became very distant at work, and then that's when I started realizing myself that, hey, wait a minute, I'm not meant to work as a pharmacy technician. I started seeing the dark side of the industry, like really full on, realizing what just a money-making machine that it is. The people that ran that pharmacy, they were good people. They were trying to provide for their family, making a good living. At their core, they were good people, but they were completely unaware of just what the machine, the pharmaceutical industry is, especially right now. I think a lot of people are really starting to see how corrupt that industry is. So it really started getting to me, not only my stress at home with Jessica, but started getting to me on a soul level of like, dude, I'm poisoning people. I'm contributing to the opioid crisis. I'm contributing to children's childhoods being, you know, ruined by giving them, you know, what essentially is methamphetamines in the form of, you know, Adderall, Ritalin, all these things. We did a lot of those prescriptions, and I was like, dude, this doesn't feel right. Why are we drugging up these kids? And again, you know, like at the time I thought it was innocent, but it was just complete unawareness from the staff and the owners of the pharmacy. So I had a crisis of conscience, if you will. It came to a head. I'm like, all right, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is too stressful at home, and like it doesn't feel right in my soul. And I was having some issues with a coworker there, which I didn't understand because like I feel like I'm the nicest, kindest person to the people I work with all the time, and here's this guy that like hated me for no reason at all. But it's kind of now that I've had time to reflect on that, I think it was kind of like a misery loves company kind of thing. He did my sheer positive vibration was illuminating his shadow aspects, and he didn't like.
Hey, why aren't you miserable like me?
Exactly. So he unconsciously did everything he could to bring me down, and with Jessica bringing me down, like it started bringing me down, and I was feeling very low, and I just, like I said, became very distant and like quiet, and experiencing a lot of social anxiety at work. I'm like, dude, I have to leave this industry. I can't do this anymore. So eventually I left, and I came to a crossroads, and I was like, what the fuck am I gonna do? I thought I had it all figured out. Like, I'm gonna be a pharmacy tech. Like, this is how we're gonna rise and get our own place. Yada yada yada. So now I was like, okay, what am I gonna do now? Like, I have no career prospects, got no job. I had limited money saved up. Jessica found a job at the time, so thankfully, like, she helped keep us afloat during that time. But yeah, it's kind of that's began a period of self-discovery for myself. It's like, what do I want to do? And which I'm still kind of figuring out in some ways, but I have more of a clear idea of how I want to help this world, how I want to contribute, the mark I want to leave, which ultimately is to leave this place in better shape than it was when I came into this world. That's my ultimate goal, is to make this world a better place. And how I contribute, I'm working towards that. But in the interim, I'm just always spread positivity, unconditional love and compassion for all that I encounter, and spreading truth and helping in any way that I can. I've acquired a lot of knowledge in the past, 10 years, 10, 15 years. So right now I do my best to share that in a very loving way. But yeah, at the time, I just like, oh shit, what am I gonna do? And that's when I started, thinking like, all right, what am I passionate about? And I gravitated towards plants, and that led me to local food. That's a whole other story, but yeah, and essentially I was jobless, and she was working, and then she let me come work I was able to work part-time at her job, so we got our, beginnings of working together, which is kind of like what we're doing now, which is great, Yeah. We have a good dynamic when we work together. I feel like it's just getting going. So there was some positive aspects during that period, but yeah, as you can imagine, not having a job and all these things, the stress and the trauma continued, and that job became a little stressful for her eventually because it wasn't the best job. Ownership wasn't that good. Yeah, so eventually I found a job.
Yeah.
I was doing something I like. I was doing deliveries, which I'm still doing now. It's not what I want to do forever, but as I've come to find out, it's a type of job when it's under the right conditions and the right team. It's a job that I can do well. I get to have time for myself, which is very, very important, because at home, I like to give my all to my partner, as much as I can. I just love her so much, and she's a person that requires, a decent amount of attention. Like, this is how it is, There's nothing wrong with that. It's just in her human design, it's in her astrology. We can't deny who we are, and I love giving her my best, Yeah. So for that, for the type of person that I am, I require a good amount of alone time. And at my delivery jobs, I've been able to get that, Like right now, I did work yesterday doing deliveries, out in the hill country, and so I'm good to go today, Yeah, that was kind of the beginnings of self-discovery. And so I got the delivery job, that progressed, and it was going pretty well, Like I work with a great team. I'm still in touch with some of these people.
Which got us closer to diving into local agriculture.
Health. Namely health. That's kind of like, there was already seeds of, starting to do better health. Oh yeah, just as a quick aside, during that period of transformation of leaving the pharmacy, Jessica and I were not like strictly like raw vegan, but we went vegan, if you will, or more like vegetarian, but it's pretty vegan.
Mostly vegan.
We had cut out meat for almost 6 months, which I it was absolutely necessary for the time, because especially me, I had a very toxic relationship to eating meat. I was not in tune with the animals I was eating, didn't give gratitude like I do now. I was eating the wrong kinds of meat, I was eating way too much of it. I used to be a very inflamed person. Very, and I just had no idea how that was affecting my mental state, my emotional state, always feeling bogged down, you know, like run down. So yeah, doing that cleanse from meat was so refreshing and liberating at the time, because when we started eating meat again, it was a much more healthy and, you know, being more in tune with the body, knowing like, all right, it's too much meat and only eating it, you know, when the body truly needs it.
And then eventually it's the quality of it.
Yeah, exactly. The quality matters. As she's probably mentioned before on this podcast, I think she has.
Episode.
Yeah, the food.
3.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
So anyways.
Check them all out.
Yeah, they're all really good. So anyways, I was at the delivery job, delivering local food. I loved it. I got to work in Austin, which you guys know I loved at the time. But yeah, so I was doing that for a few months, and things were getting really intense at home. Like her episodes were just increasing in intensity. Like it was just very tumultuous, and then that came to a head, and that I experienced a major, worst one I've ever had in my life, like panic attack. Not getting into too much details, but I was actually at work, and on my way back to San Antonio from Austin, like I had started experiencing extreme heart palpitations, like the craziest ones I've ever experienced in my life. And I had to pull over, and like they wouldn't stop. Like I felt like my heart was gonna explode and come out of my chest, and like I'm not one to call the authorities for anything, you know, like, you know, why would I have to unless it's absolutely necessary? But in my heart, like, literally, like, I felt like, all right, this isn't a medical emergency. Like, I need medical attention. So I called 911, and the paramedics came to get me. You know, I pulled into a gas station before. I felt like I was gonna faint. And yeah, the paramedics came to get me, and, you know, I had to tell my work. And yeah, I was in the ambulance ride, like, felt like I was gonna like pass out at points, and they hooked me up to the machine, like the heart, you know, monitor, and like my heart was like 185 beats per minute, which I thought was like insanely high. But at the same time, like the paramedics were like, yeah, this is nothing, you know, like, yeah, we've seen this before, like, so I wasn't like overly concerned. I didn't think I was gonna die, but it felt like I was gonna die. I felt like I was gonna have a heart attack, and I was like, what the fuck, you know, like, what is this happening to me, you know? And yeah, I ended up going to the emergency room, and yeah, my parents came to get me, and I remember like something that stood out, you know, just having a moment of honesty here, but I remember my dad told you on the way up that you told me like, this is your fault. You did this to him. Yeah, and then, I don't know, that just really stood out to me when she told me that, and so after that, I was very anxious. Very anxious person. Like my anxiety had like really skyrocketed to a level I'd never experienced before. I developed a lot of medical like anxiety, because I thought like, oh shit, something's gonna trigger, you know, that feeling again, you know? Yeah, I was doing things that contributed to that, like having too much caffeine. That's when I started getting to yerba mate and trying like new teas and things like that. I was having too much chocolate. Essentially, I hadn't figured out, you know, how much stimulation, how much chi boosters, you know, how much energy chi my body can handle. I've been able to regulate that a lot better now. I know when things are too much for me now. But at the time, I was barely discovering what my body can handle, what's good for it, how much of it. I didn't know yet. So as you know, some of you may know, when you have too much caffeine, it can stress out the body, whether you realize it or not. It adds a lot of stress. The adrenal glands get really taxed. Cortisol is just rushing through your body all the time, which in a short-term basis is not bad, but when it's chronic, when it's consistent day in, day out, it throws everything else out of whack. Your hormones, everything. I think that's what happened to me. It just reached a boiling point of emotional stress at work, you know, from doing a physical job, driving a lot, and boom, it just all came to a head, and became an anxious mess. Like, I started developing health issues at the time, which some of it were related to my job. I was experiencing environmental toxicity, which I didn't know until months later. I kind of like Dr. House my way into to health. Yeah, but during this time, I started reading like all kinds of shit, like what's wrong with me? I try to like go about it in a very Western medical way, you know, like following the symptoms, not studying the systems, which that's what you should do, you know, is look at the body holistically, as she's mentioned in other episodes. It all is tied together. But I was, funny enough, we had just watched Doctor House, like the show House. I had seen it for the second time in its entirety, and that's something we used to do. Is we used to be very plugged in during this time. Like
we used to watch TV.
Yeah, Netflix, just like, you know, so innocent when most people do. You know, a lot of people do these days. Is after a long day at work, they'll put on the Netflix, you know, whatever, Amazon, and just, you know, check out and get it entertained. Which is nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging anybody for doing that. You know, but you know, especially when you watch things late at night. I didn't know it just at the time, but when you consume things at night, it goes directly into your subconscious when you go to sleep. And you do that day in, day out. You know, depends on the type of content you're putting into your mind. Like, it gets in there. And House really got in there, and I just began, you know, viewing myself like as, you know, one of those patients on House. Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Because I started experiencing like muscle twitching, like everywhere.
Bunch of mystery stuff. And funny enough, he did find a doctor who was like a Dr. House. Like, he viewed his patients like puzzles, and Damian became one of the best puzzles for him. I even met this doctor once. He wasn't even like that interested in me. He was completely interested in Damian and what he was experiencing and trying to, you know, do math equations in his head, you know, like.
Yeah, he's a good guy. You know, for being a Western doctor, he was definitely the best one I've ever had. He was a very caring person, older guy, which doesn't surprise me because, you know, a lot of these newer doctors, they're, not all of them, of course, they're not bad people, but a lot of them are so heavily indoctrinated by the Rockefeller medicine system that's, you know, currently influencing medicine in the United States. It's a whole other topic right there. But anyways, he was very caring, and he tried to help me genuinely figure out what's going on with me, because my labs were saying one thing, but my symptoms were saying another thing, and he hadn't really considered environmental toxicities, because that's not something that's heavily considered, but it's a big factor. You know, that's one of the first things you should look at if you're ever experiencing extreme dysfunction in your health, is what sort of things are in your environment. And that's not just physically, but, you know, emotionally as well, you know, which for me it was all of the above. But anyways, I started freaking out. Like, I was reading so many like articles on, you know, WebMD and Healthline and all these mainstream publications, and
they might as well like just tell you like you're gonna die. Yeah,
I literally like convinced myself that I thought I was gonna die. Like, I thought I was developing ALS because I started getting like numbness in my right arm, like, and it was really bad, and the twitching. So I was like, holy fuck, like, I'm developing ALS and I'm gonna die. And then there was many moments at work, because I was still doing deliveries at the time, because I got to be alone a lot. A lot of people didn't see this. I dealt with all this all on my own. I would cry a lot on my way to Austin, you know, like, But it was moments where like I was envisioning myself like my little nephew, like, growing up, and I wasn't gonna see him grow up, like, because I was gonna be dead, and like I literally thought my life was coming to an end, and like, I'm like, dude, how am I gonna go out like this with all this pain and misery? Like, it was very low. I was very depressed, and even like during this time, like, Jessica was like, dude, like, I don't know what the fuck's happening to you. Like, I don't even like, I gotta be honest with you, I don't really feel attracted to you right now. Like, and that just made me feel even more low, and just like, dude, like, it was one of the darkest periods in my life, and not too many people know about that. Very few. Anyways, so that kind of came to a head as well when Jessica's dad died. So it was the New Year's Day. Jessica's dad died, and the night before, I had made a New Year's resolution, like, you know what, like, I got to let all this stuff like stop getting me down, like, this is the year of getting my health back, you know, like, I was tired of it. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm like, that's it. We got to find a way out of this. Like, even if I'm experiencing health problems, like, I can't let it get me down. That's when I started working on my mental state. Like, you know what? Maybe some of this is being caused by my mind. So it was both. Some of it was mental, like I was doing this to myself, but some of it was physical. It was both. It wasn't just all in my head. But yeah, so Jessica's dad passed away, and it was a shock to all of us, you know, like, even for me, like, I was like, okay, I'm starting, like, yes, like, momentum, like, I'm gonna get better, and then her dad died, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it was all of a sudden. And because it happened in Mexico, unlike here in the United States where it takes like a week or so for everything to like be finalized and then a funeral and all that stuff. Over there, because it happened in Mexico, everything happened like so quickly. I think the very next day we hopped on a plane and then bam, we went over to Phoenix where we met up with my brothers and my cousin, where we drove together down to Mexico just to like barely make it for the funeral and the burial. So it all happened so fast.
Yeah, and one thing that's very striking during this time period, during this, the whole funeral process and all that, was that my family and I, especially me and my mom, were very like distraught, and like we cried, and like I was like, holy shit, because I had only met her dad I think a few times, but he left an impact on me, like I really told him like, I'm gonna take care of your daughter, like you have my word, like she's in good hands, like. Yeah, like at the time, I didn't know all the things he had done to her and like all this stuff. I didn't know that yet, and I just thought like, okay, maybe this man just is like essentially like giving her up to me, kind of like it felt like a marriage, even though we haven't been married ceremonially or legally. I felt like as soon as she came with me into the car, that day in the desert, I felt like that's like we're starting our life together as like newlyweds. It's kind of what it felt like, And in a sense, we had a month-long honeymoon traveling, Yeah. Anyways, I took that very seriously. Like, as I felt responsible for her, like I really felt like her dad, like spiritually, like, all right, she's yours now, like in the sense, like you got to take care of her, It's no longer my responsibility.
Your problem. Just kidding.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So when he passed, I was like, what the fuck, like it just really threw me for a loop, and during this time, like, Jessica was trying to help him with his health, and his health had deteriorated very rapidly, and he ended up dying of the flu, comorbidity with diabetes and all these other things.
Really
but it was a really bad strain of the flu. A lot of conspiracies about that, which I'm not going to get into right now. I could talk for hours about that.
Yeah.
But anyways, he passed away all of a sudden, from the flu. It just overwhelmed his body in Mexico. So we went down there, and at the funeral, it was very surprising to me because like all our family was like grieving and crying and remembering their Theo or brother, and I cried at the funeral too. I was like, I've cried at many funerals, especially when someone that's made an impact in my life, even if it was very brief. Like I just had that compassion of like, grieving for the loss of this human being, Not, attaching any emotion to it, but just like, man, someone's just died, like, going through the process. But Jessica was the only person at the funeral that was just kind of like nonchalant about like, oh yeah, you died, okay, we gotta move on though, like, it really stood out to me. It's like, dude, do you not care, like, at all about your dad? Like, I know she had a lot of rough times with her dad. We hadn't known the extent of it at the time, but I was like, man, like, either she's heartless towards him, or she was in shock and she was completely suppressing it, which I feel like at the time she was.
Yeah.
Partly,
Yeah, and at the time I actually thought that there was like something wrong with me because it's like I wanted to feel and grieve and whatever, and yet a bigger part of me was like, I need to hold it down for everybody here. They can't handle death for some reason.
Yeah, she has a certain relationship to death. I like to call her like a transition specialist. So if you, yeah.
Yeah. My relationship to death is, unlike a lot of people's. I think. Anyway, I don't want to get like too off topic here, but at the time I did think that, wow, there's like something like wrong with me here, and it took a long time before it like kicked in, what had happened to my dad, and I guess you could say that, I was in shock in a lot of ways, because I even took pictures of like the funeral just so that I
of his dead body.
Yeah, so that I could know, and I kind of as proof, like, yes, this did happen. And it might sound kind of like weird or like shocking to like some of you guys, but once I start giving my spiel on what it was like for me, you might have a clearer idea as to why I would, take a picture of this as proof, as like, yes, this did like actually happen, like he's gone, but yeah, at the time I was like, shit, is there something wrong with me? But where I am now, I feel that I just have a different relationship to death. Am I more tapped into my heart now? Yes. I feel losses. I grieve more now. But death is just everyone's lights are gonna go out at some point.
It's a transition phase in one's life, and
it's a very sacred one. Where I have my own kind of like philosophies as to how I feel that it's not the end, and
those are our beliefs.
Yeah,
we don't know with 100% certainty, but that's having that faith. That's what we believe and that's what we perceive.
Yeah, and but yeah, anyway, so yeah, that stood out to you. It stood out to me too.
Yeah. So this is very important though, because after the funeral, we were hanging out with Jessica's family, and then we had a long drive back to Phoenix from Mexico, and I had met her brothers. They're cool people. Like we were we got along. It was great. But during this time, I feel like that's when our bond started to really get stronger. We had all came together for the funeral, and Jessica's brothers are not very in tune with their emotions, so during this time we could tell like it really brought them down, especially her brother Tony. Like it really hurt him, and he doesn't like to express a lot of his emotions. He internalizes a lot of things. Yeah. Okay. Sorry,
keep going.
Okay. So anyways, her brother was kind of having a hard time with this whole thing, and we decided at the time, after talking to them, like, hey, maybe we should move in together, because the seeds that were planted on a trip to California that previous year. We were like hanging out, and it was my first time back in California in like 2.5 years, something like that.
Yeah, during the height of your health crisis.
Yeah, because we had already like purchased tickets to go to this trance event with my friends and stuff, and it was supposed to be a joyous, time, but. I made the best of it. I did have a good time. It was great seeing my friends, but I was very much in the middle of my health crisis, and I told some of my closest friends, and, I know it was kind of sad for them to see me that way, but I really did my best to, put my best foot forward and enjoy myself. But it was a little bit of a struggle going out there, but there was one moment where we were, I had to leave the first night of the event because it just became too much. I wasn't on any, mind-altering substances. I had to take a benzo to calm me down, because even just being in that environment was too much stimulation for me. It was, whoa, it was crazy. I thought I was having a panic attack again, so we had to leave the event. And, we were back at our Airbnb. We were, chilling outside, and it was, this really nice place in Riverside. And, we were just sitting out there, and we were like, hey, you know what, maybe we should, this is before our dad died, maybe we should, see if we can move back west, maybe not California because it was too expensive and stuff like that. Yeah. But I was like, maybe we can move in with your brothers, maybe we set them up, see what they think. It was just an idea. The idea was planted at the time. I guess you could say it was like a download or something,
Yeah, just finding a way back west, because we hadn't really acclimated that well to Texas weather.
Yeah, we complained a lot. There was a lot of things that we were just like, about,
Yeah, we were ungrateful sons of beaches.
Yeah, we were the first time at the time. Yeah, first time around living here.
Yeah, but it essentially led to us having that discussion with my brothers about, hey, what if we were to move in together? And we all agreed on it. It felt right. There was momentum, and so we got that going for the following months to come. So we came back to Texas, where we just played out the rest of the months.
Yeah. But so kind of going back to after the funeral, we had already had the idea. Yeah. So then we started discussing it with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so, and the guys were on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, her brothers were definitely on board. They liked the sound of that, you know? And so then it was like, okay, how are we going to make this happen, you know? It was one thing to have the idea, but then we all thought, hey, I think it would be good for us to all live together. That way her and I can, like, you know, move out of my parents' house and kind of like be on more on our own, be more responsible for ourselves. And yeah, so we had a goal to work towards. Like both of us were in agreement. Like, hey, we really want to make this happen, like so bad. So that was I would say, a shift of positive momentum in our relationship, because we were both like unified in our pursuit of this goal. Because there was a certain appeal of going back west. You know, there was something, a magnet. Specifically, the city of Sedona. It was really calling to us because we had gotten some spiritual teachings of some spiritual teachings from a spiritual teacher that we no longer follow at the time because using our discernment, we just determined it's not for us. But anyways, at this time, it did help us in our journey, and the spiritual teacher did a lot of events in the city of Sedona, and we had heard about it, and it just kind of activated something within us, like specifically me, like, dude, there's something about this place. It sounds so magical. Like, we gotta go visit, you know?
Yeah.
And we did. You know, it's the law of resonance. We had to go, and we did when we moved to Arizona. So yeah, we had a goal to work towards, and we started to save as much money as we could.
I was working.
Yeah.
You were working. Took you some time to find gigs.
So like in the lead up to work, leaving to Arizona, like I was working, and then she left her job that she was at. She's like, oh, I just want to take some time off before we leave, or like, because things were, one thing that's happened in her jobs in the past, and it's another reason why she can't work a regular matrix job. At least at the time she couldn't, you know, maybe it'd be different now, but who knows. Anyways, she was starting to, she had gone past the getting to know you phase with her coworkers, and Jessica's had this like tendency to try to go too deep with people too quickly. That's one thing she's had to find out about herself, is that you can't go deep with everybody.
No.
Certain people you can, but most people you can't.
Yeah.
You can find common ground, doesn't mean that you can't be friends with somebody or, you know, like talk to them and enjoy their company, but some people just don't want to go there. Their soul didn't come here for a great awakening, and that's fine. People are here for all sorts of reasons, you know? You can't interfere with someone's development as a soul. You know, some people are only here for certain things, and you gotta honor their journey, as we found out. So yeah, like Jessica like left her job, you know, so it was up to me to like really get everything, all the financial stuff in order. And that's one thing that's like during our relationship is like, it's been tough is financially, you know, with me essentially having to carry most of the load financially. It's been a little rough at points, you know. That's something that's definitely got to be discussed in a relationship, especially with healing, you know, is financial stuff.
Yeah.
And my whole health crisis took put a hit on my finances because I had really basic insurance, so I had to pay a lot of things out of pocket myself. You know, my parents helped, but still, it was a lot of it on me. So it was like, it was a little rough. So anyways, fast forward, we ended up getting to Arizona, and right off the bat, as soon as we got there, it's like, shit got real quick. Because like, all right, got there, I didn't have a job, she didn't have a job. I had gone there with, you know, aspirations to work in the medical cannabis industry, which I kind of ended up doing, not in the way that I thought, but my, intuition was right. Like, you know, I did get a lot of positive benefit from it that I'm still applying today. But anyways, I was jobless for several months, you know, like debt.
I got a job for you soon.
Yeah, she did. It was great, you know, like she was holding it down for a little bit, but then for me, it's like I started getting really worried, like shit, you know, like I'm running out of money, you know, like gotta pay rent. It was the first time in my life, like gotta pay rent. Rent's due, motherfucker. You know? Yeah, and you know, aside from all that, like electricity bills, which we came to find out living in Phoenix, they are astronomical.
In the summer.
Yeah, definitely. Very, very high. I just did not account for that at all. Even into like late summer and early autumn, it's still pretty high.
Yeah.
You know, until like late November, this really starts to cool down.
Yeah, you can turn off your AC.
Yeah. So anyways, I got a job doing deliveries again for Amazon. Very, very stressful. You know, I only lasted there for a few months, and because it was too much, I couldn't take it anymore. And then she had quit her job at Kohl's around the same time.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, we had this period of like we both got into like a funk,
Yeah.
like a month straight. Like all we did was get high all day and like eat food, and we were just like in this daze. Like we both didn't want to face reality. Like shit, what are we gonna do? We're both out of work. Our money is running low.
Yeah, and I think this was around the time that you kind of gave me the ultimatum too.
That wasn't until a little bit later.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, this period we were both just kind of like in a black hole depression. Like it really sucked. And then my birthday came around. It was my 30th birthday, and I was very sad that day because it was was it my first? Yeah, I think it was my first birthday that I celebrated. Oh, technically my second, but anyway, so it was his first birthday that I didn't have any of my like close people like around me besides Jessica and her brothers. Like it made me really sad because it was my 30th birthday, and like usually like growing up, birthdays were a big deal for me and my family. There would always be cake and we'd be celebrated. We'd always celebrate each family member on their birthday. It was a very special thing, and the first time in my life, like nobody was there to do that for me. Yeah, my parents called me and all this stuff, but they're really low, and we ended up going to dinner that night, and it was very great. Like her and her brothers, like put in a little effort to make my birthday special, and I'm forever grateful for that. For making my 30th birthday, they helped me turn it around. But anyways, yeah, the following weeks after my birthday, I ended up landing a job working as a CBD consultant / salesperson. And I really began to develop my self-confidence, activate more of my charisma and magnetism. I learned that I could be a good salesman, that I could speak so eloquently, It really activated my I am presence, my throat chakra, because I had been very suppressed. I'd always been very shy, and I'm still kind of more of a reserved person, but I know that I have it in me to be very social, to command a room, to speak, and everyone listens. I know I have that ability and that gift. Mm-hmm. I just need proper rest time. I can't do it all day long. I'm not a generator in the human design. So I'm not one of those people that can just be on all the time. Like I can do it, but I also need recovery time. Very important.
Yeah.
But anyways, so yeah, during this time, like I had a job and I was working, and I was like, I felt like, all right, things are going good for me. I'm actually following my passion because I've always been into cannabis for so many reasons, not just getting high, for recreation, but medicinally. And as I came to find out during that time, spiritually, began to connect with the plant on a more spiritual level. But yeah, things were getting very rocky for us around the time of her birthday in June during that year. So I was at my job, was getting going, and yeah, her birthday came around, and like, just remember there was like a whole incident. Like she wanted to do something for her birthday, but then she like decided like, no, I don't want to do anything, and like I can't remember exactly what was troubling her, but she was flipping the fuck out. Like
it was the fact that I wasn't comfortable celebrating my own birthday.
Okay.
That's what that was, and that's been something that I've struggled with every single year until like recently. Like anytime my birthday came around, I didn't like it. I would withdraw. Anybody that wanted to celebrate, I didn't. I essentially had a certain relationship to my birthday that was kind of depressing, I didn't like celebrating my own birthday, and yet I loved celebrating other people's, right? But never my own. So it was that. Like I had started to like want to celebrate my birthday, and yet I had that certain relationship
like blockages,
blockage.
Like self-worth, blockages.
Yeah, like self-worth.
Like she didn't. Maybe she felt like she wasn't worthy enough of being celebrated. Yeah.
Something at the time, and so that really kept me from celebrating my own birthday. And everyone was like waiting, to hear from me. Everyone being like my family, what are we gonna do, and I wound up canceling like everything, and that really got to Damian because he wanted to celebrate it, and yet I didn't.
Yeah, and like that was a really striking moment because that particular incident like set off something inside me, and like, wait a minute, like the loops, were still playing out, the cycles were still playing out, and like I was working a lot, and because I was doing a sales type of job for the first time in my life, I was beginning to learn, I need my rest, like I have to be on at work. So yeah, I needed to manage my energy appropriately, and it was really starting to bring me down a lot at work, and at home, so I wasn't having that balance there. And then there was this one moment where, like, after the birthday incident, I'm like, wait a minute, this is during this time we were starting into more of our spiritual disciplines and practices, at least the knowledge aspect. And we were following some people on YouTube at the time we no longer follow, but we learned a lot from them. And one of the things was personal responsibility. That for me was really prominent during that time. It's like, wait a minute, like this is not her fault. This is my fault. My suffering is because of me. Yeah, she's lashing out and doing all these things, but that's on her. Like, I am choosing to be here and to endure this suffering. So then I started having like moments during this time. I think it had ramped up. Like, she's like, oh, I don't think we should be together. This and that, we're just nothing but disharmony and this and that. And it was really starting to get to me. I'm like, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't be together. And I was just like, I had that moment of like, I'm responsible for this. She has her part, but it's ultimately me that moved out here with her. Like, I don't like it because the first time in my life, I didn't have my parents, specifically my mom, there to comfort me and to help me through the tough emotional times. My mom's always been such an angel and helped me, get through the toughest emotional moments in my life. Maybe to the point where it became kind of a crutch because I hadn't really processed and dealt with things like by myself, internally.
Till you moved to Arizona.
Yeah, I was all on my own. I felt very alone during this time, because I worked a lot. We didn't really make any friends in Arizona. We tried, but just didn't vibe, with the culture and some of the people there. Anyways, it wasn't meant for us to make a lot of connections there. Maybe it's for the best because we ended up moving back to Texas. But we did get close to our brothers. That's one thing I'm forever grateful for, So we didn't make any friends, but I feel like I got two brothers out of the whole experience. But anyways, back to the story. I had this moment where I was like sitting outside the apartment. I'm like, dude, yeah, this is all me. I'm like, I reached some moment like, that's it, dude. I've had enough. Like, I've had enough of years and years of emotional abuse. I don't say that lightly, but I'm very compassionate towards Jessica. Over what she went through, and I know that even during all those years, early years, I kind of had this feeling in my heart, like, dude, this isn't the real Jessica. Like, this is her hurt and her pain expressing herself. Like, 'cause overall, I know she's always been a loving, caring person, and she is. And I just came to find out that her traumas had really warped her mind and instilled her with a lot of darkness, and just crazy stuff, which helped me in a sense alchemize my own darkness, to be in tune with my own shadow. Everyone has one. Everyone's got a dark side, It's whether you suppress it or you integrate it, as we came to find out. But it came to a point where I gave her an ultimatum. I was like, that's it. This is it, for real. It's like, I've had enough. Like, this is my fault. Like, either you begin to seriously take, your healing, seriously, or I said, I'm out of here. Like, I'm going to move back home. Like, I've had enough. Like, this has gone on for way too long. Like, I'm at a crossroads in my life. I'm not getting any younger, getting older, either shit's got to change, or this is going to continue forever. I'm gonna waste years of my life suffering. And I think it really spoke to her. She was like, oh shit, wow, this could really end, And she had talked about maybe we should end, but it just really got her to think I don't want to lose him, in my life. Because I told her, if we were to ever break up, I would have to cut
Never
myself.
talk to me ever again.
I'm not saying never, never say never. It's one thing I've learned, that you can't never say never, but I've told her, with complete honesty, that I would have to distance myself from her indefinitely. Now, it's not to say never, never talk to her again, but knowing myself well enough now that I would have to have a period of, recovery, of moving on, dealing with all the hurt and pain that I experienced early on and stuff like that. So I'm like, dude, if we break up, that's it, you're not going to hear from me for a while. Who knows for how long,
And then after that, that's the time we did 2CB?
Yeah, so a little bit after that ultimatum, I had the idea, I had another, higher self-download of hey, I got this 2CB, It's a substance I always wanted to try. And I read that it's like a combination of LSD and MDMA, and it could be very good for healing when you use it in that sort of way. And I'm like, hey, like, let's work on our relationship, because she was willing to. Like, let's go, to Sedona, get an Airbnb, and we'll drop his 2CB, but we'll set intentions. So during this time, we were learning about intentions and how important that is just for life in general, but especially for healing. Setting specific intentions, writing them down, speaking them out loud, it really crystallizes it and brings it into reality. Very important. So, yeah, we decided to do this healing journey. We set powerful intentions. We even went to this really beautiful spot in Sedona called Bell Rock. We were like, okay, sunset, we're putting our intentions out there. And we went back to the Airbnb. It was dusk, and we cleansed our space. So this is the first time we had done the psychedelic in a very ceremonial, healing type of way. Because we had done them before, it was more recreational. But this time, since we were diving more into our spirituality, like, we're going to do things differently. It was new for me, because I had had a lot of recreational psychedelic experiences, which a lot of them were great. Some of them were intense and crazy, downright scary. But this one, felt different. Like, all right, this is medicine. This is truly medicine. Mm-hmm. Even though it wasn't a digital substance, it was semi-synthetic. Still, it's the intention, how you approach it. So we set our intentions, like we want to heal from our, our relationship issues, like forgive each other for past transgressions, just essentially become whole and more harmonized in our relationship and heal from our trauma.
Heal from our trauma, and I think one of our intentions was coming to an understanding of whether or not to proceed forward with our relationship.
Yep, exactly. And it was an extremely powerful experience. I could say that there was a moment where our consciousnesses merged and became one. We were experiencing and seeing the same thing. It got very DMT realm during points. If any of you, again, have done DMT, but if you haven't, look up Alex Gray art. You kind of see these sort of intrinsically complex geometric patterns. It's mind-blowing,
shiny and colorful.
Yeah, but it's not just the visuals, but the energy that you're tapping into from these higher dimensions. It's like being closer to God, if you will. But anyways, during this trip specifically, we both really saw the power of our words, of the vibration of everything. When we said certain words, we would see literal waveforms traveling through the air, and we were certain words had a certain waveform and feeling to them. We were I think that was one of the first times we really felt the power of our words and how we talk to each other and talk to ourselves. I think that was the most important for you.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of you working on your negative self-talk. Because that's one thing during this healing journey that we've been on, she's been on individually, is that she's always, in the past seen herself very low and would talk bad about herself. And I think a lot of that came from her upbringing, being called trash and no good and all these hurtful things, really get into the subconscious, again, it's very important is what you consume, the environment you're in. It really does affect you in the mind, and your thoughts do create a reality. So that's a whole other topic right there. But that's something she had struggled with a lot. And that's one thing that really got to me during this whole, time in our relationship, is her talking down to herself. It hurt me, on a very deep level, how could you say that to yourself? You're such a loving person, You're such a beautiful human being, beautiful soul. How could you say such hurtful things? And for me, that became very toxic, hearing that day in, day out. It really started bringing me down. It's for me, it hit me on a very deep spiritual level. You're desecrating your life. You're demeaning the sacredness of life in general, being a human being. So I was whoa. After years and years of that, that's kind of what led to that ultimatum, because I was I'm tired of you talking down on yourself. It was very toxic to me. It was affecting my well-being, So I was I've had enough. And so that was the beginnings of her starting to reform how she talks to herself, how she views her own self-image. So that was a very powerful experience. It was only the beginning. That really accelerated our healing as a couple and as individuals. That was a huge catalyst.
Yeah, it definitely had a two-way effect, both as a couple and individually, because we had our own individual lessons, like you mentioned, with my own like negative self-talk. Did I still fall into the trap of negative self-talk? Yes, but I was able to kind of catch myself a little bit more, and I was able, you know, once you have the download, it's all about integration. You have to apply the things that you learn, and you have to not just apply them once, but life will create situations where you have to apply those lessons.
You gotta prove that you know it.
Mm-hmm.
Like pop quiz.
Pop quiz, yeah. multiple times, different scenarios, things that happen. Okay, well, you talk to yourself good at this scenario. Okay, we're gonna throw this scenario at you. How will you talk to yourself then?
Like, here's a massive trigger.
Yeah.
How are you gonna react?
And here's another one, from all these different angles, right? So I had the massive download individually, but was that it? No. Implementing and integrating what I had learned was a huge part of this healing journey, where I'm no longer really talking. I don't think I really talk bad about myself anymore.
Not really, no. It's been quite a while since you've had like a major incident of like talking down to yourself. Like, yeah, I mean, you and I both had moments of like insecurity, of like feeling like we don't know what we're doing, or like kind of like that. But like
it's a whole different expression.
Yeah, but the whole like negative like self-talk, like calling yourself trash and worthless POS, like I haven't heard that in quite a long time.
Yeah. So yeah, that was like the individual lessons, and he had his own individual lessons as well, and then also as a couple, right? Like how I treat myself. It was like the beginnings of like holding my own as part of a union.
Yeah, how you treat yourself is a reflection of how you treat the other. Like it really starts. If you treat yourself like shit, chances are you might treat your partner like shit. Yeah, integration. So just as a quick aside to wrap that up, integration is extremely important, not just when doing psychedelics. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys hear that a lot, is integration, integration, that 75% of the work is the integration, and 25% of it's like the trip. I would agree that that's a fair assessment. But that doesn't apply just for doing medicine journeys or psychedelic journeys. It applies for anything that you learn. It's one thing to acquire knowledge and learn things, but it's like, are you gonna apply it? If not, it's just taking up useless space in your mind. That's one thing I've had to learn, is I used to consume a lot of just random stuff, and like it's not really necessary unless it's gonna help me and help other people. Anyway, so yeah, integration is very, very important in everything that you do, everything that you learn. So after that trip, we began a journey of integration, and integration does not have a time limit. It doesn't.
No.
You don't have to do it all in a week and that's it, you're done, you're whole, and you're enlightened, all this stuff. Like, no, it'll last as long as it's gonna last.
Yeah, and then it'll like plateau, or like you will think that you've completed it, you've learned your lesson, and then unexpectedly something happens and you get triggered, and are you gonna react in the same way or not?
Are you enlightened now?
Are you enlightened?
Yeah.
Did you remember that lesson?
Mm-hmm.
Can you apply it now?
It's like that famous quote from Ram Dass. So you think you're enlightened, huh? Go spend a week with your parents. That's the real litmus test right there.
Whatever.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, in the months that preceded, things were, starting to feel better. Like it was a very profound trip that, obviously like most powerful trips, the downloads and, the codes and stuff that you receive, like sometimes they take a while to really implement into your life and just pop up.
Yeah, I feel like that deepened our relationship like the most at the
at that time,
up to that point, because of like looking into like your soul, and just like how many times we've played this game together, and like how old of friends we are and have been.
Yeah.
How many times we've agreed to live this human experience together with different faces, different identities, and yet still kind of showing up together. And I'll talk more about like that kind of concept in a later episode, but here's a little cookie crumb.
Yeah.
that like just made me view you in a more like special lens, that you know you are this very special person in my life, and we are connected on just so many levels, where it's not just the human level, it's the soul level, it's
The quantum level.
the quantum, like we're so intertwined to one another, and that really helped kind of like shift how I view you.
Yeah, I would say it did the same for me, and you know, it's going to be a very great episode when she gets into that, because you know we're believers in multiple incarnations. You know, we feel like we've been playing this game for a long time, a very long time.
Yeah.
So you know, some of you might have seen Jessica post certain things. You know, like we've been doing this a while. We would at least try to make an effort to complete all our lessons and karmas in this life. But anyways, that's for later.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, that was a very radically shifting experience for the better, and you know, doing it in Sedona really even amplified, because that place is very powerful. You know, it can be a very powerful amplifier for healing work. You know, it's there's certain things about that place that we can get into later in a different time, but yeah, when you use it with intention, the energy of Sedona can be very healing and powerful. So yeah, fast forward from that. You know, we're integrating the trip and all that stuff. And was it 2019? 2018? Anyway, I can't remember the year specifically. I don't want to spend too much time trying to rack my brain.
Yeah. Left brain.
Right. So I think during that time, yeah, we had moved into our new home in Phoenix. We had moved from an apartment. We had been in an apartment complex for about a year with our brothers, and then we moved into a house. We were all really stoked about it. Like, yeah, you know, like I had gotten a promotion at work. I got promoted to store manager, you know, and it was I ran my own store, you know, and it was great. It was a lot of responsibility, and it was the beginning of the end for my time at that company, which I came to find out the owner was not the best guy. But anyways, yeah, we moved into the house, and it was very tumultuous, the transition, you know, just moving in general, but moving when you have to work full time, like, geez, it is really tough.
Yeah, which you didn't do too much of because
I was working.
Yeah, because he was working, and the only thing I had really going on at the time is that I was in massage school, so I had a little bit more time.
Yeah, she wasn't working at the time.
Yeah, but
I think you did Starbucks like over the summer, but yeah.
Yeah, but after that, I was like, nah, I need to find a career or something. I can't keep doing these.
So that was, you know, glad you mentioned that. And we think we overlooked that during that time, that was part of your own individual healing journey. Is you know, like trying to figure out what am I here to do.
Yeah.
Because she's like, that's when I think she was really starting to see like, I can't just work a regular job like everybody else. Because she was meeting a lot of resistance.
Yeah, in just about any job, like I just kept meeting like resistance. Like I would do really well. I'm a very hard worker. All of those things. Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Maybe even to her detriment, she gets too focused on work sometimes. Anyways.
Yeah. But it was just kind of like a pattern. So like I was like, okay, I have to figure out, you know, a path to take that
is in alignment with
who I am and stuff. And so I chose, you know, massage therapy because at the time I just wanted to get my foot into the door of the world of the healing arts, because I had devoted myself to healing, which I'll get into in a little bit, and I just wanted to get my foot in the door. So yeah, at the time I was in massage therapy school.
Yeah, she took the leap of faith, and I fully supported her. Yeah, it was after that trip. I think that was like really, you know, catapulted, you know, a lot of things. It was a catalyst for many things, not just in her healing as a couple, but in her development as a person. That's what really like, all right, I gotta do something, you know. And she had the download like massage, you know, and it was great. You know, my parents like came to visit us, and they're in full support, and so was I. And during that time, she was like, "Oh, how am I gonna do it? This and that." But you know, she took a leap of faith and got student loans. And she didn't have a car, so we were sharing one car at the time. It was really tough.
Yeah, I took. I was riding the bus.
But I was so proud of her for like having that, you know, that will, like, I'm gonna get it done no matter what. And that's why I was like, yes, finally, you know, like not gonna make excuses. Like, yes, is a, you know, a period in your life where it's like you gotta get it done. Like you have that will to succeed, you know. Yeah. I was so happy, like, dude. I was like, I think she's starting to change. Like, this is it, dude. Like, here we go. You know, it's like, it really made me so happy to see her like beginning her transformation in a positive way. You know, like finally, after so many years of pain and suffering, you know, like, you know, with good times, of course, but still, I was like, finally, I'm glad Jessica's becoming more whole. So yeah, she had gone all in on massage school, and yeah, we did our whole move. But yeah, once we moved into that house, it began another like period of tumultuous, you know, emotional experiences for many reasons. So you know, just moving in, and not only did we move in, but a bunch of cats moved in. We're not going to get too into detail with that, but we have to mention it that it was a cause of lots of emotional distress.
Mm-hmm. Mostly for me because I became the cat lady. Mm-hmm. My life revolved around trying to train and deal with cats. I had a certain schedule. My life began to be I was devoted to these fucking cats.
Yeah, and it began in October of 2000 and was it 19? Yeah.
It started 19.
Yeah. So this is right before, you know, the craziness of, you know, what's going on now. The pandemic started, you know, and yeah, and it was around December of 2019 that yeah, we hit this patch in our relationship where things got really intense, you know. Oh. And I would say, you know, this is, you know, my tinfoil hat on here, that coincidentally, right, during this time, the 5G towers came online. And, you know, it was so strange because I was even at work and, like, I started feeling a certain way, like, I was getting really sad, like, emotionally distraught, you know. And during this time, there was a lot of weather manipulation in Phoenix. Like, it was probably the cloudiest winter that, you know, Phoenix had experienced in a long time, if not ever, you know. Because it's usually very sunny in the wintertime. That's what it's known for. It's more cloudy during the summer, believe it or not, during the monsoon, but it was unseasonably cold and cloudy for December. I felt like we were in Texas. I'm like, where's all the sunshine? You know, it wasn't like this last December, you know? But anyways, it was a very dark time, and we were feeling intense emotions come up, and I'm like, I didn't know it at the time, but I think there was definitely a connection with, you know, those frequencies, those non-native electromagnetic frequencies, which they do affect us, you know? We're made out of 70% water, give or take, and they definitely affect our emotions, you know, whether you've looked into that or not. I encourage it, but anyways, not to get too sidetracked there. Things started coming up within us, like, we started butting heads again, and then we had, like, a, you know, an incident where it's like, you know, maybe we should break up again, you know? Like, and I'm like, dude, I thought we had got past this, you know?
Yeah. At this point, it felt pretty serious because we were more intact in our own identities. And so at the time, it was just kind of like, you know, we're just so different now.
Yeah.
That maybe it would be the best for us to just go our separate ways without, like, you know, no harm, no foul, you know, like, the love is there, but maybe we've just become two different, like, people that, you know, have two different paths. So that was really highlighted around this specific time. So it was less of, like, you know, like, yes, we were butting heads, but we were really
stepping into our own. Like, I was becoming more confident in myself, because before, you know, I've been, like, very shy and just not really, you know, more subdued and just not in my full expression in a positive way. So I gained a lot of confidence at the job, you know, doing sales.
Yeah. And then around this time was, like, the beginnings of, like, okay, I've spent the majority of, like, my healing journey, like, with this person.
Yeah, in your 20s, you know, since essentially you were 19, you know?
Yeah, since I was 19, you know, with this person, like, who am I without him, you know, without Damian, you know, do I even know who I am? Like, this was, like, the beginnings of me kind of, like, you know, maybe...
Questioning.
Yeah, really questioning if, you know...
We were meant to be together long term.
Yeah, until, like, the day we die or whatever. Like, I never questioned that he was going to be part of my life till the day I die, but, like, in what capacity, that was starting to change.
Yeah, you know, me being 6 years older than her, you know, full disclosure.
Yeah, he's older than me, guys.
Yeah, you know, when we first got together, I was like, dude, she's the one, you know? Like, I had experienced heartache, you know, I had been done dirty and gone through, you know, my own pain in the relationship department. So I'm like, finally, she's the one for me. Like, I want to commit my life to her. I even gave her a promise ring. I still intend to fulfill.
It doesn't even fit my fingers anymore.
Yeah, that's how much we've changed.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, so for her to say that, it was very painful for me because I'm like, dude, I've gone all in on you and our relationship, you know, like I've done all these things, like, you know, if I were to start over, it'd be really like hard for me, like extremely hard, you know, because given how much I invested even financially, like I would be left with essentially nothing, you know. It really would be like a divorce, you know. But anyways, like yeah, I was like dude, I've committed my life to you, you know, like I would, because I mean, I attribute that to being older, and she was still young, and I get that. I can definitely empathize with her position, you know, that you know she wanted to find out who she was without me, you know, like maybe kind of play with that idea. So I can't blame her, you know, for feeling that way at all, you know. I completely get it, but it was still hurtful to me, like dude, like I've committed my life to you, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, that December was very intense, and then came January, and whoo, oh mama, the intensity, you know, meter went off the charts, went all the way up to 11 because one day all of a sudden some grand revelations came about, and it shocked the hell out of both of us.
Yeah.
You know, again, I don't want to, you know, just put it all out there because this is your healing journey, but some things were uncovered from her past, which, if any of you know some things about trauma, which she's probably mentioned, is that when some things are really traumatic, people can tend to like block things out. Like there's things from my past that are very traumatic that I blocked out because I can't consciously remember, but you know, my mom has told me things that had happened when I was younger that I was like, holy shit, and I know that's affected me today for sure. So sometimes the mind, you know, blanks that out from your conscious memory to protect you, if you will, you know?
Yeah. So some uncoverings happened, and
yeah, some very terrible abuses, you know, that's all I'm going to say, because to respect your healing, you know, but yeah, some very dark, twisted uncoverings that left us both in a state of shock.
yeah. So essentially, proceeding forward, we decided to heal that. I decided to heal that within myself, and he decided to take the opportunity to heal
aspects of my shadow that incident uncovered within myself. It illuminated things within me from my past that I didn't realize were still affecting me to that day, you know? A lot of darkness within me, you know? I've had to face a lot of demons within myself. Some people would think like, dude, you know, like, it's you know, but we all have darkness within us, you know, and you have to take an honest look at yourself and all that is inside you, all that you've, you know, experienced and endured and, you know, participated in. And it doesn't make you a bad person, you know? Because you have to love yourself and forgive yourself through everything, you know, but still you have to face those aspects within yourself, and it was very illuminating for me at the time with my own, you know, shadow aspects and, you know, demons, which were very dark, you know.
Yeah, so we essentially decided to kind of combine
our powers, if you will, because
yeah.
During this time we had really, this was probably during the height of like our you know, journey into spiritual practices, which we still apply some of them today, but you know, during that time we were getting a little ungrounded. We were starting to, but not fully yet. 2020 is when that really took off for a lot of us. But yeah, we were, you know, really into like doing things in a very ceremonial way, like smudging, you know, setting intentions, using like meditation music. Yeah, and like we did some very powerful work, at least the beginnings of it, you know. Yeah, so I don't know where you want to take it from there. Diving further into the subconscious of what had happened to her.
2020.
So this is the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic started.
All right, because I'm starting to get a little ahead of myself.
Okay.
Into like late 2020 and
okay.
2021.
So just kind of speed things along. You know, the pandemic started, which was freaking nuts. You know, we all experienced it in our own way, but we can all agree it was very intense.
Yeah.
And just something worthy of mentioning is that we both lost our jobs during, you know, beginning of that. You know, and yeah, it was just a huge shock. Like, we were out of work, and because of how crazy things were and how much stuff we were hearing on the social medias, and I was like, I got, you know, self-admittedly really wrapped up in some psyops, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck is happening? You know, like, everything's being uncovered right now. Like, this is it. Like, we're, you know, gonna take down the shadowy cabal that runs the world, which I still believe, you know. But again, that's my own thing right there.
Yeah, definitely not overnight.
Yeah, yeah, definitely not. But I thought it was like, this is it, you know. Like, this is the craziest thing that's ever happened in, you know, modern history. Like, we're gonna do it, you know. Like, we're gonna take everything down. So I got all wrapped up in that. But yeah, during this time, we weren't working, and we began to really like dive within and like taking a lot of time to ourselves to yeah, fully explore ourselves, connect with our inner child. So we really used the lockdown period like to our advantage. I would say.
To go in.
Yeah. So for like 2 months straight, we weren't working. We essentially like took 2 months off because we didn't want to work. You know, like frankly, we were like we didn't know what was happening out there. We didn't know what was real, what wasn't. Like, you know, the fear got to us in a bit. You know, maybe not like other people, but we were like, is it real? Is it not? You know, like I don't know. Maybe we should be cautious regardless. You know.
Yeah, we were just like anybody else, kind of like in the sense that we didn't know
like I think
what was going on.
Yeah, we didn't know what was going on. I think we knew from the get-go that hey, something's amiss here.
Yeah, something's amiss.
But we just didn't know like maybe it is real though. Maybe it's being blown out of proportion, but maybe it's real. So we gotta be a little careful.
Yeah, like a little bit of that, and then like, and a lot of like what's happening next. You know, like economically speaking. Socially speaking, you know, there's just so much uncertainty, not really knowing like what to do and how to
proceed.
How to proceed.
With just life, you know, like
what we essentially did that summer of 2020 was essentially just follow our highest excitement to the point where we were irresponsible, but
yeah, especially financially.
Yeah, we were financially irresponsible.
But it was
probably one of the best times ever.
Yeah, it was because we felt very free. We were doing a gig economy work, so it offered a lot of flexibility. And because you know there was still like the main lockdowns that ended, but people were still kind of weary about going out and about. So it was plenty of work doing gig economy, you know, doing deliveries, you know, food, and it was lucrative for a while, you know, and it got us some cash, and we were like, hey, you know, like we can just do this and we'll get by, and you know, we're just kind of taking it day by day.
Yeah, and we did get by for a little bit when business was booming and everyone was at home and ordering.
We traveled too.
Yeah.
Like, because we had, you know, no set job, you know, schedule. Like
just get up and.
We took, you know, trips. We came back to Texas to visit my family, and you know, we saw like, dude, it's pretty. It was cool to change it up to come back here.
Yeah.
With different lenses, there's different people.
Yeah.
It was such a trip when we first came back to visit. We were like, dude. We were in our old room, which we're in right now. You know, it used to be our bedroom.
Yeah.
And you know, our first night here, we were just like tripping out, like, dude, like we're not the same people we were when we used to sleep in this room every night. You know,
it was so eerie because it was like we felt like we were living someone else's lives.
Yeah, it's like we were in a different dimension.
Yeah, it's like here we are in these bodies where we have these certain identities, and yet we didn't really identify with the people that were once living here.
Yeah, and that just brings up something to my mind that I feel like is worth mentioning as it pertains to healing. Is during this time we got wrapped up in a lot of new age mumbo jumbo, timelines, and all these things. You know, it was a little deceiving, to be quite honest, because you know that was 2020 in a nutshell. You know, seeing through the great deceptions of this world. So many. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I personally myself was wrapped up in a lot of just stuff that wasn't for my highest greatest good, but it was a false light, like luciferic type of energy that was like, I thought that this was the way, you know, salvation. You know, I thought I was gonna ascend to a higher dimension, and I was just completing my work in 3D, and I thought this was gonna be the last time I see my parents, and it was a whole thing. So I feel like I had to mention that, because when you're on a healing journey, you know, you might meet teachers or teachings or philosophies, and you have to just really put on your glasses of discernment and see it. If this is, you know, in resonance with you, if this is just false light, you know, is it an illusion or is it the real deal? Is it going to benefit you, or is it taking you away from, you know, being in your body, like being grounded? You know, if it is taking you up here, if it's pretty much, to sum that up, if it's too good to be true, probably is. Yeah. Just kind of keep that in mind, you know?
I feel like that phrase kind of goes across the board. Nothing, you can't just think something and then it just kind of like happens. Like
Yeah.
you have to put some sort of energy, some sort of like effort into things, which I actually do want to talk about in an episode for sure. But for this one, using our discernment is of the utmost importance on this healing journey. And we definitely learned that in 2020 because we did get wrapped up in, some of these teachings or like philosophies and things of that nature that were kind of, it set us back in many ways.
Yeah, we, especially me, I can speak for myself, I developed a very unhealthy spiritual ego, very disconnected from, my body and reality. Like, I was feeling good, I was feeling tapped in, I felt like I was just tapped in all the time, and I didn't know I was tapping into false visions, which is come to find out is a very Luciferic energy, but that's a topic for a different episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it even kind of freaked her out at times that I was like getting very like shamanic and tapping into all these visions and seeing visions of dystopia and like it was crazy. So like it really lit up a fire in me to like speak out. I became very outspoken in 2020 for any of you guys that followed me during that time. If any of y'all did, that's when I really like went full on with speaking truth, which I still do. I just do it in a very much more centered way now. Less of it these days, as we'll explain towards the end of this podcast as to why, because we're entering a different phase of our life.
Mm-hmm.
So, fast forwarding through 2020, we did our traveling during the summer, and we did some very powerful healing work, some very powerful subconscious, quantum healing work, and during this time, it really brought things up, brought things up that it foreshadowed a lot of things that were going to happen in the future, like this.
I'm pregnant. He's touching my belly.
Yeah. In some ways, it cemented our relationship, maybe for down the road, but at the time, it started, really activating her more, I would say in a positive way, because she started realizing more of her own power.
Yeah, and up to this point, I was like many people who kind of embarked this path. I was afraid of my power, I was afraid of what I was capable of, and I did have a mentor at the time who I love dearly even now.
Yeah, we got a lot of positive benefit from her, even though we don't follow everything she was teaching at the time, still,
She's got a special place in our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
We love her very much. And she was the one that really kind of spearheaded me towards owning my power, and but yeah, just really stepping into that side of me without any fear, as its best expression, right? Because I guess in a way you could think of anger and rage as kind of power, but that is not the proper power that you would want. So I learned a lot from her, and I learned around this time to really start stepping into the authenticity of that expression.
Yeah. So after these powerful sessions, this powerful work that we did, we went to California to work with this teacher. And so we went out of our way. We felt a strong call to do so. And it was very powerful for both of us. It's still kind of unpacking, Not everything that, was done in the healing work has come to pass, and some of it was illusionary, but there was things that, affected us positively at our core. But anyways, let's fast forward to, we came back from California, and then you had the women's retreat.
Yeah.
This is when things took another turn.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want me to set that up, or if you want to get into it yourself, but I feel like it's worthy of mentioning it.
Yeah, so I guess this goes back to discernment, right? And discerning spiritual teachers, leaders,
and spiritual work. It's
and
very powerful. It can change someone's entire life and reality. So you have to be very powerful. Very careful in the sort of work that you undertake or that you participate with other people, because it can affect someone's life in a very positive way, which we have experienced working with certain people, but it can also affect it in a detrimental way, which we've experienced as well.
Yeah, so because 2020, a lot of people's like spiritual ego was like at its highest, and everyone was like essentially kumbaya. Everyone's just kind of like enlightened and all of those things. There's a lot of gatherings, a lot of retreats, and all of those things of people getting together and doing these spiritual things, right?
Yeah, we thought we were winning. We thought, we were like, yes, we're taking down the forces of evil once and for good.
Yeah.
We thought it was going to be all done in a year,
Yeah, so when I went to this retreat, because I had been working with my mentor at the time, she even disclosed to me that, like, what was the reason for me, like, going, right? Because I had set this up, like, earlier in the year, and it got postponed because, 2020 and all that stuff. And she had shared with me that I wasn't going there for the retreat itself. I was going to practice, using, my powers and things like that, and also clearing the city of Sedona. So while I was there, they did, spiritual things, I guess, but basically the entire time I was there, I was essentially working, because, they would open portals, spiritually. They would open like spiritual portals, and when you do that, like, you have to have some sort of grounding force or some sort of like protection. You can't just open yourself up, because when you open yourself up, you open yourself up to like anything and everything, right?
Yeah,
you have to
which
be very
can be influences and entities and beings that are not of the light, not of the highest greatest good sometimes.
Yeah, so any visions that you get may or may not be legit, some of them might be, twisted up in a certain agenda, right? So you essentially open yourself up to any and all agendas. So you have to be very specific. You have to have like somebody there or a group of people there, like holding it down spiritually. And don't get me wrong, I feel like they meant well, but I don't feel like they knew exactly what they were doing. And I essentially felt like they were being extremely like spiritually irresponsible, and I was essentially working. I couldn't like really enjoy that women's retreat. Did I mingle? Yes, and all of those things, but overall, like, I was working, I was clearing, and sometimes like nonstop. I remember one of the nights I was just clearing because they were just passing around the hot bay, and just opening portals, and then they would have this experience, and I would like, bring it back, and protect and all those things. I even sat outside, and it was a whole thing, and I would like notice that, like, as I would clear, then like they would kind of like calm down or kind of like integrate what they were experiencing or whatever. I was essentially working, spiritually speaking, holding it down, clearing the energies and all of those things. And that was a really crazy time. I'll create a whole episode on, discernment and, touching up more on what happened. But during the women's retreat as well, like at the end of it, I went to go see a psychic, right? Who we had worked with before.
Yeah, she completely changed my life. She's the work I did with her was essentially what catapulted me to do the sales job. She recommended this book that changed my life, and it really activated me. So there was good work done with her, but then this time around it was different.
Yeah, it was different. So
it was solo, because we had done a couples reading the first time, and this time it was just her.
Yeah, this time it was just me.
And I think it's worth mentioning that during this time, she was starting to, tap into her own power, but when you do divinatory work like that with another person, it can be beneficial. It can be. It's not all bad, but in a sense, you're still like opening yourself up and I wouldn't say giving up your power, but you kind of like putting in an outside influence, so it could go many ways.
Yeah.
You're not, in control, if you will, fully.
Yeah. So what I essentially got with this reading was that there was another man right? So this is where like the concept of another man was implanted into my psyche, right? That she didn't even finish the reading. She didn't want to like tell me everything or like tell me to just like end things with Damian because there was love there. Yet she had mentioned that there was somebody else who could and would like, you know, cross waters and
That was more aligned.
that was more aligned with like who I am. And that like really like got into me, you know, because I had already kind of been feeling a certain way about, you know, being with you, being with Damian for as long as I have, and essentially just knowing him, like he was all I knew. You know, as far as like who I am like now, you know,
Yeah,
like
she was starting to know who she was without all the trauma.
yeah,
I mean, she was still working through it, but it was less. It was affecting her less in a negative way.
yeah,
She's like, "Who am I?" You know, without
Yeah.
all this pain and hurt.
yeah. So, but she said that, you know, like kind of work it out, you know, and all of those things. And when I got home,
She had said
night,
that if I made
yeah,
like, the effort, like to like,
yeah, if he made the effort, then
she'd probably stick with me.
yeah, then it might actually be good. But if you didn't do the work or didn't, you know, do, you know, your part, then, you know, not to worry because there really is someone else. And yeah, I took that to heart, you know.
So did I.
And yeah, so when I got home, you know, I gave him an ultimatum, and I'm like, I'm willing to sit down, because, you know, part of that was that Sedona wanted me and wanted me to do the work there, and different episode. But essentially, you know, I went back home in Phoenix, and I was like, you know, that's where I'm going. I'm going with or without you. I'm doing my shit with or without you. And he was like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, like I thought she was gonna come back like empowered and all these things, but yeah, I guess she did. Yeah, to the point where she's like, I don't need you, you know, like either I'm doing this with or without you. I'm like, holy shit. So then I was like, okay, yeah, I gotta start changing my ways here, you know, like I gotta like step it up even more. I was like, holy fuck, okay. Yeah, so it was like, okay, we went all in on the concept of moving to Sedona. We even went out there to look at apartments and all this stuff, but then we saw like, I don't think it's gonna work out.
It didn't, like, the more we went and the more time that we spent there, the less we really like resonated with it.
So like, you know, during the process, we even like we were considering every option, like, oh, maybe we'll get a, you know, our VRBO, Airbnb, and like try to like stay there temporarily till we can find, you know, another job. But anyways, fast forwarding, we ended up not moving to Sedona. And during this time, I had got a really unfavorable job, without getting into too much details. And so began, you know, the real dynamic of that we are in right now of provider, kind of housewife.
Yeah.
Because you know, I was like, okay, we're running low on funds here because you know the gig economy had dried up. I'm like, I need to find a solid job. So you know, I found a job, and you know, I thought I was like doing, you know, the best thing for us. And I told her, okay, like she's starting to get behind on her bills at the time, and I was like, okay, like I can't help you with your bills. I'm barely, you know, trying to keeping us afloat with, you know, the rent and all this stuff. So I was like, all right, if you want to like take time off to heal, to focus on her healing, because her sexual healing had really ramped up during this time after the women's retreat, and something was brought up for her, and she started focusing on that. I'm like, okay, like I honor your healing journey. Like this is what we got to do, you know, for a relationship, for you. So be it. You know, I'll go work. So I did. I was working long hours. And, you know, one of the not so great things about, you know, living in Phoenix is that there was a heavy energy of laziness in our home, you know, without getting into too much detail.
Yeah, so I didn't get a lot of stuff done.
Yeah, it's part of her upbringing, that kind of, this kind of habit's a hard break, but anyways.
Yeah, so,
yeah, like I would be working all day, and I'd come home and, you know, like there wasn't any food made, there was freaking dishes everywhere, because I would say, like during our time in Phoenix, I was essentially the lead dishwasher at home for everybody. But anyways.
Yeah, and I was essentially in this whole, you know, what is my purpose? Why am I here? You know, going through that cycle of, you know, what am I doing here and what's my purpose and, you know, all of those things. But I don't know, I kind of feel like I should give my spiel.
Yeah, you want to just
Yeah, and then just kind of like tie it in and get to like that point.
Sure, okay. This is your podcast.
All right, so pause on that, right? Because a lot has been discussed already. He has shared so much on what it was like for him, and he even went into detail of like legit like scenarios of what happened, right? So what did you hear? You heard a lot of turmoil, emotional turmoil, mostly coming from me, right? You'd mentioned several times trauma and all those things. So going as far back to like 2015 when he picked me up, you know, when we essentially became married unofficially, that's when I really realized that I was as traumatized as I was. Like I knew that I had issues. I knew that I was a hothead. But the intensity of it, I did not really start feeling into until he picked me up and we went, you know, traveling in California, and I was with this person that I had like barely just met. Like I was essentially running away with this stranger, which was a deep fear of mine because I had done that in 2012. In late 2012, I had run away with someone who was actually a criminal. But things did not end very well, and I guess he left me very traumatized. And so like here it was again, was I playing out that same scenario, or was this like for real? And so I was essentially uprooted into California, which is an area that I'm just not the biggest fan of. It was a culture shock for me. And there was just so much newness for me, like
new people,
like you had connections already to, you know, your friends, like you were already established there, and I really wasn't. Like it was a new environment, like I had these feelings of insecurity and feeling out of place, not knowing if this was the right decision for me to make. I was very anxious at the time, and barely scratching, I wouldn't even say the surface, but this was when I started like expressing like my anger towards my dad, like just out of nowhere, like, I fucking hate you, you know, like, and he was there to like experience it, like, whoa, you know, like I just picked up this woman who seems like the woman of my dreams, and yet here she is like having a mental breakdown right in my car, right? Because in California, you essentially live in your car. I mean,
yeah.
Sorry, guys.
It's true, guys. You gotta admit it.
You know, but yeah, it was like rough waters for me, and you know that's when I really started like, whoa, you know, and I was dissociating a lot, and I didn't really realize just how much I had dissociated from my upbringing or anything like that up to that point, because typically I would, you know, like I would essentially just run away. Like if I didn't feel comfortable with a certain situation, I would just go somewhere else. I'd go out in nature or something. You know, I would essentially run away from the environment that was causing a lot of disharmony within myself. And here I was, this new situation, this new environment, having grown up in like a small town, there weren't really a lot of dangers. And he was like, no, you can't be walking in the streets by yourself.
It wasn't the best neighborhood we were staying at.
Yeah, you're a woman, you're a lady.
You're a beautiful young lady who is a, you know, target to predators, which is a very legitimate, you know, concern in certain areas.
Yeah. So this was the beginnings of him essentially trying to like insulate me, you know, and keep me from running away literally from my uncomfortable feelings and triggers that had come up, which up to this point really didn't make themselves known as far as like where it was coming from, where it was stemming from, or anything like that. And during this time in California, you know, I was an anxious mess, right? I was like, fuck, like, where am I? Who are these people? Like, am I safe? You know, legitimate concerns, right? As a lady, you know? And I had done 25I, which is a synthetic
Psychedelic.
psychedelic.
It's like your first real like psychedelic experience, right?
I had done acid that you had given me before, but I didn't really count that one because it wasn't like a legit experience. But I mean, I did get visuals and things. But anyway, I had done 25I, and that was the first time that I felt like, okay, you're okay. Like you can relax, you know, like you're safe here. And I remember like crying because like up to that point I was always on guard and always like very anxious, like walls up, you know, type of mentality. And you know, my anger was essentially my mask, right? It's what kept.
That's your defense mechanism.
It was my defense mechanism
for many years, as you kind of find out.
Yeah. So and here I was like, I was getting these feelings that yes, you can breathe, you're safe with this person, like it's gonna be okay, you know. And so so I trusted in that. And you know, but that didn't necessarily stop, you know, me from having mental breakdowns, you know. Yeah, and eventually, you know, we had some good times, some not so good times, but I would say mostly some good times.
Yeah, absolutely. The good times have outweighed the bad.
Yeah.
I think that's why we're still here.
Yeah.
There's been love there.
Yeah, but
through it all, there's been love underlying our entire relationship.
Yeah.
In many capacities, but love nonetheless.
Yeah. But because of how uncertain and how anxious I was, especially in the beginning, it kind of sucks that I don't completely remember like everything from like the first 2, even 3 years of our relationship, because of like just kind of like dissociating, essentially like checking out, you know, being stressed out, and, you know, it was like a coping mechanism that I had like developed as a means of coping with very stressful situations, like growing up and things like that. So essentially when we like moved back, or when we moved to Texas the first time, that's when I really felt into just really how damaged and how traumatized like I really was. Like a lot of triggers of like family dynamics. Here I was like with strangers, you know, a stranger's family, you know, do they even really like me once they start seeing my not so pleasant side? Like, are they just going to kick me out to the curb because I had previous experiences, you know, being kicked out of, you know, living situations that I was in. So I was always like on guard for like the first 2 years. I think it wasn't until like the 3rd year that I really started feeling comfortable with Damian and his family. Before that, I was like an anxious mess. Like, I always thought that, you know, something was going to happen.
Like self-sabotaging, if you will.
Yeah, self-sabotaging. So it was a lot of that for a long time. It was very difficult for me feeling into like being comfortable with being with a stranger, with a stranger's families and all those things that meant very well, you know. But because of everything that I had been through, you know, growing up, and my relationship to the dynamic of family and to the dynamic of my own self-worth, it was very turbulent time of my life. And then also, like he had mentioned, he would like be very stubborn when I would have like these mental breakdowns and, you know, all of these things, like I would express in my own way. I mean, granted, like I would like yell, like, you know, get out of here, or, you know, leave me alone and things of that nature. He just wanted to help, but in the most unhealthy way, where he would do the complete opposite of what I was asking. Yeah. Just because I was in a heightened state, right? And just wanted to solve my problems that I didn't even know what they were. And I'm like that type of person, like I need to be alone. Like if I feel like I need to be alone, I probably do need to be alone to find that clarity so that I know what the heck is going on. And so here I was, and throughout this whole time, like I would always try to figure it out, right? Because it's not, even though I would self-sabotage myself into these states of minds and all these things, And I essentially became very comfortable being in this space. Not that it was comfortable, but you know, you essentially, it's it's like a it's like a baseline, if you will, right? You just become so used to living in this state of suffering and pain and reliving, you know, painful memories, and not necessarily the memories themselves, but the feelings that came with it, with the intensity of the feelings, and not necessarily being able to make sense of it. So, so here I was like at the height of, you know, these emotional like turmoils and things like that, and here's, you know, my well-intentioned partner, super left-brained, trying to understand, trying to fix, you know, what was wrong with me, and to the point like he started looking up, you know, psychological like diagnoses and things like that, and you might as well have said that I was, you know, every single one of them.
Yeah, didn't realize it was totally bullshit at the time.
Yeah, I mean, he found one hat that, you know, fit me the most, but, you know, I felt very hurt by this, even though he meant well, trying, if, where I am now, I know that he was just trying to make sense of, you know, this confusing thing that was happening to me.
In a very logical way.
In a very logical way.
I didn't understand emotions, you know, in the way that I do now, or at least what I'm striving to.
Yeah. You know, if something sad happens, like in the moment, someone cries, okay, that's understandable. But if something happens like a long ass time ago and here's this person malfunctioning, like what's going on?
Time and time again.
Yeah. So that was essentially like him, right? And it hurt me a lot emotionally, because not even I knew what was wrong with me. All I knew is that like I felt the way that I did. I experienced, you know, the feelings that I did, and that's all I really knew. Like I would always try to make sense of things, but it was very difficult to make sense of how I was feeling and making sense as to why I was feeling those things when I had someone pressuring me to solve it right then and there. And as we continue on our healing journey, you can't fix it all in one go. Like it is a journey. And right when you think you scratched, you know, the surface on one thing, that's it. You just scratched the surface. You're gonna have to scratch some more a different time, or a different time. So the
never-ending onion.
Yeah, it's like a never-ending onion. So even if something were to happen again, which it did several times, like he had mentioned, you know, it's like, what's going on here? You know, like I thought we had already dealt with this, and here you are malfunctioning again. My words, right? But I mean, that was essentially kind of like the energy, you know, and because he had unintentionally kind of like contributed to that turmoil through pressuring me to figure it out and pressuring me to like be a certain way, I interpreted that as, you know, I'm not good enough for this person. I'm not good enough for anybody. Like nobody understands me. Very victim mentality, you know, mentality, right? But that's how I felt, you know, and I felt like there was legitimately something wrong with me, and I felt that way like for a very long time. And here, like, was just very kind person, very kind people that were trying with me, and I couldn't get it, you know. And so I just like thought that there was just something wrong with me, and I was always going to be that way, and all of those things. And so I did start on this healing journey, you know, little by little, but I guess you could say that I became very comfortable with it. As far as like, yeah, I went through some stuff, you know, but like, and now I'm fast forwarding to like the Phoenix, you know, time when we had moved, right? You know, like still pity partying, but a little bit less, you know. And this was the point where I was like, you know, I actually have to do something about this, you know, because even though I'm not like in the worst place, like I have to.
That personal responsibility kicked in, huh?
Yeah, that personal responsibility like kicked in, you know, like, you know, or potentially like losing you as my partner, as, you know, my best friend, like everything, you know, and it just like really made me like look within myself, like, you know, in many ways it stirred up like that whole like I'm not good enough for this person, like again, you know, and all those things. But then I'm like, you know, like that cycle and basically all of the cycles of like emotional turmoil and all of those things was, I didn't like that anymore. Like, I was tired of it. I didn't want to be like that, and I never really wanted to be like that. I just convinced myself that that's just how I was. But that moment when you gave me like that ultimatum and we worked on our relationship and all of those things, multiple times by the way, we worked on it, as you've kind of heard by now, like we've worked on our relationship multiple times, and it's something that we've had to work on continuously. Yeah, so taking that, you know, full responsibility of like how I'm living my life, how I'm speaking to myself, you know, and what I'm putting into the table, you know, for us, for anybody, and, you know, especially for myself, because I was my own worst enemy. So if you were just now like following me or have recently started following me and you see this positive person who's even like, you could even say a little bit full of herself, it wasn't always like that. I was actually my worst enemy. Nobody had to say anything mean to me because I did that myself. I was very self-destructive, very hurtful to myself, verbally, physically, you know. I had a very unhealthy relationship with myself, with my own self-image, self-worth, and all of those things. So it was really Phoenix when I really had to, you know, step into that personal responsibility for creating my own image of myself and image for others to experience me. And that just like kept going, even into like massage school, getting into the healing arts, making sense of things, falling in love with the art that is like healing, you know, healing the body, learning about, you know, how trauma is stored in the body, and starting to think in that way, you know, starting to think not just like left brain, but also right brain, and merging the two, you know, hemispheres, and really dedicating my life to healing, the healing work, because I had already like been doing this since like the first time we had moved to Texas. That it's essentially become my life.
Just leveling up.
Yeah, like I have devoted so much of my time to healing in general, mentally, physically, you know, and I've experienced so many different levels and dynamics within this whole healing journey that I would say like this is it for me, mostly, you know. So
I would say the best is yet to come. I feel like we're barely starting to scratch the surface of the rewards for the work that we're putting in.
Yeah.
And of course, we know that the work will always continue. It'll evolve. But I feel like
we're barely seeing the first fruits of our labor.
Literally, I feel like this child that we're being blessed with at this time is something that's come about from the deep spiritual work that we've done. Because I feel like this child is a blessing for us and so many people around us. This world, actually.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a physical alchemy, you know, alchemization of the work that we've done. We've come together to create a life.
Yeah, we're now entering into a whole other phase of individuals and as a couple.
Yeah, and as parents to be.
Yeah, as a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, like, you know, adding another layer to our relationship, you know.
Yeah. So psychedelics have definitely helped with this whole healing like journey, as you have heard from Damian speaking, that we have done it multiple times. We didn't share about like every psychedelic experience that has helped us. Those weren't the only tools that we use to transform like how we view our subconscious thoughts and our perceptions and all of those things, but they definitely did help a lot. They were definitely milestones, and it was the integration aspect of it.
Yeah, having the courage to embark on such journeys, because it does take a lot of courage, especially for those who know it's going to be a powerful, you know, session, powerful work. because a lot of people are scared to do psychedelics. I mean, I got scared away from psychedelics for many years after some very intense experiences. So it does take a tremendous amount of courage to embark on that sort of work.
Yes, absolutely.
So, I just want to give us, a round of applause, for having the courage to dive into ourselves, to dive into the totality of life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And all of its expressions that we have yet to still discover more of its expressions.
Yeah.
But it does take a huge amount of courage, and it takes an even greater amount of courage to do this with another human being.
And not just psychedelics, but just having the courage to embark on the journey of healing, of self-discovery, of mastery in this life. That takes a tremendous amount of courage, because, too many people in this life are just content with just, coasting by, doing the bare minimum, working for 40 years and, retiring and calling it a day. But that's just not the life for us.
No, it's not. So, to begin, tying this all together, hopefully what you have, started to gain a little bit is it possible to be in a long-term relationship if you are, an emotional mess? Yes. Is it possible with everybody? No. But is it possible? Yes. Both people have to be, on par with, or in agreement in that you both want to grow, and stick it out, because things get real really fast. When you move in with another human being, it gets real. When you're in the dating phase, you present yourself in the best way, you show your best selves. But when you get to live with somebody day in, day out, it's when you really get to see their shadows, their tendencies, their hard-headedness. Stubborn.
Yeah.
Taurus.
Guilty. That's who I am.
Yeah, but you also get to see all of the beauty as well, the kind nature. The quirks, oh gosh.
There's been a lot of laughter.
All those little moments, right? And I guess you just have to go into any relationship knowing that everybody has baggage. Everybody does.
Doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, we're all in this human condition together.
And that's it. It's the human condition. The way that we're expected to live is unhealthy for our mental health, our physical health, all of it, right?
It's unnatural.
It's unnatural, and it creates so much trauma within each individual, and it isn't until we start doing this work that we really feel into just how extensive this work is. And it's very tough to do it on your own. It's even tougher to do it with another person, and to last as long as up to 7 years with another person, and still be in union, and still respect one another, even more so.
And still love one another.
Yeah, still love one another. I don't think that'll ever really change, even if we do change, and all of those things. And I feel like we're gonna have to do another episode, going forward. But what I really wanted to create here is talking about the real stuff about this healing journey with another human being, and the trials, the tribulations, and yet finding the will to keep proceeding forward for ourselves and for one another, and really choosing to grow.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. And I just want to wrap it up and kind of just reiterate a lot of things she said, but also emphasize again that I've had a lot of part into a lot of that turbulence in the beginning. I would try to cope with her outbreaks in very unhealthy ways. It brought up to the surface my own unhealthy coping mechanisms of trying to fix everything. Again, that comes from my own trauma. So yeah, I had to learn a lot of how to navigate through her traumas. So I do own up to my part in causing or making things worse in the beginning. So I've had to do a lot of work myself. Even though she's had a lot of trauma, I've had my own. So I definitely want to emphasize that I've had to do a lot of growing myself. Maybe I'll open up about it some other time on my own format, but yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up, that we both had the willingness to continue forward.
And it is possible. You can have somebody and stick it out for many, many years, as uncomfortable and as ecstatic as it can be.
Yeah.
You have to find that like common ground, that balance within the relationship, and so that you can find a balance point where it's not too many highs, too many lows, right? Where it's at some point you find the balance, right? And it is possible. So it is definitely possible to heal on this healing journey with another individual without having to split up if you don't want to. So we'll go ahead and leave it at that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor to express myself in this way and to share about our healing journey together. And thank you. This is a very powerful work.
Yes, and thank you for all of you for sticking it out. I know it was the longest episode yet, but there's a lot of nuggets and a lot of gold here that you can extract from, and I don't know, maybe we can apply some of these things. Who knows? But this is kind of our journey, our story, and this is us, and this is us now.
Yeah, and we don't know what the future brings, as a couple, as parents, but I just know that I want to be there with you, and I feel strongly that the best is yet to come.
Continued, right?
We're just getting started.
It's ongoing.
Yeah.
So thank you again for being here, and thank
My
you
pleasure.
for watching. Again, I'm your host, Jessica. This is my partner, Damian, and until next time. All right? Mwah.